Time to start on the Makita Generator. I haven't had a chance to do anything with it yet other than a general walk around of it. And you can see that it leans forward. When somebody put the wheel kit on it, they did put feet on the front of it, but you can see where they were broken off. So I'm going to put new feet on it. The only thing I did when I checked it out was hit the starter, but now even the battery's dead. The guy I got it from said that it's got a carburetor problem, that he was able to get it to start, but then it would just stall. I do notice that he's got the carburetor disconnected. The fuel line is not hooked up. It does have fresh gas in it. Recoil's missing, but I don't really care about that. That's a little bent, so I'll fix that. This mount is bent down to where I can't get the spark plug out. That should have been parallel with that with a rubber grommet in it. So I'll have to take that off and straighten it back out. So first I'm going to start with those feet. So I'll get the new feet on it and then bring you back. Okay, got the new feet on it. Removed the battery. It was 10 years old. The terminals were so corroded I just cut them. I'll put new lugs on it later. Right now I got these nifty temporary clamps on there. And I think just for fun we're going to try to start it up as is and see what happens. I got the fuel line hooked back up. Turn the fuel on. And there's a choke. Choke's already on. Here, let me put you in the tripod. Alright, let's try this. It does run. There definitely is a problem. So it started up and went to wide open throttle. And leaking fuel. It's just out of the sediment filter, so that's not a problem. But it looks like I'll have to look at that carburetor linkage and see if he's got it on wrong or something. Yeah, at least we know the engine does run. I would have to say that he does indeed have that linkage hooked up backwards. So right now, I don't know if you can see in there, but it's wide open. If I pull back on the governor, it closes. It's doing the opposite of what it should do. And that spring doesn't look right either. However, it's got some kind of a solenoid up here that closes it too. And when that's closed, the governor's pegged out. Yeah, I think I'm going to pull the fuel tank off so I can look down on that linkage and see just what's going on in there. So, still trying to figure this out. This has turned out to be a real head scratcher here. It's obviously been worked on before, and we all know that's fun, trying to figure out other people's mistakes. But I was able to download the service manual for this thing, and as near as I could tell, it is just a rough sketch, but it looks like everything is hooked up like it should be. This is that auto idle solenoid. The spring goes to the top of the throttle plate and the throttle plate lever, and then this longer piece goes from the bottom of the throttle plate lever over to the governor, and then there's a spring from the governor that goes to what they call the speed control. If this was a traditional engine, where you would have a knob on here and you could speed it up and down. Obviously, being a generator, it has kind of a set speed. I can loosen that and move it, but it doesn't look like it's been touched until I got to it, and it doesn't really do anything, because the problem I'm having is right now it is resting on wide open throttle, and I thought maybe they did something dumb, like maybe the idle control is not energized when it's off, and when you turn it on it energizes it, and that pulls the throttle closed. But there's a few problems with that idea. One is, if that was the case, they wouldn't have had an off and on switch for the auto idle, and the instructions even say to let it warm a little bit before you turn the auto idle on, so this wouldn't even be energized for a while. Plus, if you see how much of the shaft is out of it, if I put power to it, it is way too far out to pull itself in. It has to be a lot closer. Before it'll hold itself in. And I'm not sure what scenario would cause this. Memory card filled up, but I'm back. So what I was saying is, I didn't know why this shaft would be having that much exposed when it's clearly mounted properly. The bracket's not bent, and it doesn't look like it's been tampered with at all. The spring, just going by the pictures, appears to be the correct one. And I suppose if the throttle was resting closed like it should be, yeah, that would be a lot closer to where it should be. So the question is why is this throttle resting wide open if everything is there as it should be? I also noticed another problem. There's a hole right there, and it's threaded. I think there's a jet missing. This side it's just a brass plug. Unfortunately, finding out after the fact, there's virtually no parts or service database, forums, much of anything for these Robin engines are just kind of obscure. Subaru themselves pulled the plug on them in 2017, so they don't even make them anymore. Seems to be a little easier to find parts for the smaller models, but this is a EH25, and the larger ones like this, there's just nothing out there. I was even thinking about grabbing one of the cheap Chinese carburetors, but even the Chinese aren't listed anything for this. Again, the smaller ones, but not this one. At the very least, I'll rob that jet out of it, because I'm pretty sure that's what's going to be missing there. So, I guess I'll poke around on this for a little longer. Something's got to cause why that's like that. The governor spring is on where it's supposed to be. This spring is kind of sprung, obviously, but that actually works in my favor at the time being, because the more that pulls, you know, that's kind of what's holding the throttle open. But they definitely show a spring going from here to that hole. Obviously these other holes haven't been used in ever. I don't know. I'll stare at it for a little bit longer and see if something comes to me. I just love working on other people's stuff, other people's repairs, and those of you that work on stuff, you guys know that feeling too. Trying to figure out what in the world they did. Okay, well, I'll look at this and then bring it back. Yeah, I'm starting to run out of ideas here, or I have moved the governor rod into various positions because there's a couple of different Z-bends on the ends here. So I've flipped it around, spun it around, tried different positions in the holes. And just chasing my tail there, because no matter what, there isn't anything in here designed to hold the throttle up against, that's the idle screw right there, up against that. The only thing that's similar to that is this heavy spring on this solenoid. And I did double check, the solenoid is not energized when the auto idle is turned off. It's only energized when it's on. So, I'd hate to do something Mickey Mouse, but I may just have to drill a small hole in this bracket and run a light spring from here to here to hold it in the closed position, but light enough to where the governor can overcome it when it needs to. Then I'm still with the problem of that missing jet, so it may be a moot point. But yeah, I'm just surprised at the lack of information on these Robin engines on the internet. I couldn't find a forum dedicated to them, any kind of database. The manual libraries had the manuals for it, and that's about all I've found. A few of the small engine parts suppliers have some small NOS parts in stock, but nothing that'll help me here. There's just very little mention about these engines. I had better luck finding information on the Jiangdong than this little Subaru engine. But I studied in the parts listing and the service manual very closely, and this is how this is set up. So I don't even know factory, when it was brand new, what is supposed to hold that in the closed position. This is the spring that goes on here. Parts manual calls this a governor spring. And this is where it was at before I loosened this up. I can move this out to where it just closes. That can't be right. Plus, if you look at the difference between this adjustment screw and the boss where it rests on, it's nowhere near where it used to be. Plus, if you figured if that spring wasn't stretched out like it was, then that means you'd have to bring this out pretty much to the max, and that's not the right kind of spring for this action. They wouldn't have done that from the factory, I hope. It does give me some tension on that. But look at that. I mean, there's just no way that that adjustment would ever do anything again. Kind of curious to see if it would actually work like that, though it is. Yeah, look what just happened. The spring popped up out of the hole. Since that's not how that type of spring is supposed to work, so yeah, that's not going to do it. I need something that can actually hold it open, not push it open. And the only way I can see to do that is just to run a spring across here. Carburetor fits too well for me to say maybe somebody put the wrong carb on it, because everything lines up, it looks factory. Even the fuel line fits right onto that sediment bowl or the petcock. Otherwise, I'd say maybe it had a carburetor on it that when it's in the full position like that, the butterfly's closed and then it pulls it open. Don't know. Okay, I feel thoroughly stupid. The fault was mine. I mean, there was an issue with the generator, but not understanding the system was mine. I had to re-educate myself on governors, because the more I looked at this, the more I realized there just wasn't anything in here to hold that throttle in the closed position. So I had my little antique Tecumseh sitting next to me, and I studied the governor on that thing, and sure enough, when it's off like it is now, the throttle's wide open. You start it up and it closes the throttle. The exact opposite of what I was trying to go through on this thing. So the fact that it was resting wide open like this is what it's supposed to do. The problem was it wasn't closing it when it started up. It just went to wide open throttle and that was it. So then my concern was that the governor itself was broken inside the engine. But I was able to loosen that bolt, put some fresh tension on that adjustment, tighten that back up as per the book, and I now have action. I put fuel in the carburetor. It'll start up. It won't run great because obviously the carburetor's got problems and it's missing that jet. And but it will idle down and idle. So, and you can see the governor arm move. So that's functioning now. My next step will be to pull this carburetor back off, clean it, and try to find a jet, and if not, a substitute carburetor that would fit and function in here. But anyway, I got fuel in there. Let's start it up. Choke it. So, still need to work on it, but obviously it's now doing what it's supposed to do, so the governor anyway. And if you, oh yes, one more thing, we were talking about other people's work. When I pulled the fuel tank off of this thing, I think I mentioned already before that one of the mounting bolts was broken. Well, this is obviously a metric generator. These are the bolts that are supposed to hold that fuel tank on. This is what somebody had forced into that hole. So that's probably why that one's broken, and they're lucky this one didn't break. So it's only got 2 of the factory metric bolts on it. Other people's work. Gotta love it.